Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here today with another Anabolic Q&A. I got some good questions lined up for you today from the Anabolic Bodybuilding School member site. If you want to ask questions, you can do it over there for $30 a month. I've got a question about why bodybuilders ignore fiber in their diets. What would be a good second compound to add to TRT? Could retatrutide be useful in a bodybuilding off-season? Why IGF-1 goes down when carbs are restricted and increases when they go up? And there's a bunch of other questions too. We're going to dig into all those in 1 second. Before you do, please take a minute to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, give me a follow on other resources. We know that this stuff can be gone in a minute, as I learned in the past few weeks. So give me a follow on X if you want the unfiltered stuff. I have my hot takes over there. I'm also on Instagram as well, and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're a podcast dude, you can listen to me over there. A lot of people miss out on the podcast. Don't drive and watch YouTube, you motherfuckers. I don't want you wrecking and hit a tree. You can listen to me on Spotify while you're driving, or at the gym if you're a guy that listens to podcasts while you work out or do your morning cardio. That's a place where you can get it. All right, let's dig into all these questions right now. All right, first question I have here is from Joshua Hoot from the School Anabolic Bodybuilding Members Community. Joshua asks, why do bodybuilding diets seem to neglect fiber intake and health benefits of eating proper amounts of fiber daily? And for those looking for health and longevity, what are some tips for getting more fiber in the daily diet? Thanks, Paul. Well, anybody who's been bodybuilding for a while knows when you're trying to pound a shit ton of food to grow that adding bulk from fiber into your diet makes it really difficult to get calories down. It's a challenging problem that bodybuilders all face. It also can fuck up digestion. Like if you're eating a crap ton of insoluble fiber from vegetables and other sources, you get gas, bloating, all sorts of problems when you're in a massing phase. Now, that's not to say that we should ignore fiber completely. It is critically important for your health, for clearing cholesterol, keeping the colon clean, also reduces risk of colon cancer, removes toxins from the body. So it is important to have fiber in our diet. As a bodybuilder, I know a lot of guys ignore it because it's just simply difficult to get the food down when you're bulking. Most of us eat meat and rice diets, or even bros that are doing keto diets or carnivore diets that completely ignore fiber. And you're increasing your odds of having a higher LDL, higher cholesterol from it. You're also increasing your odds of having a colon cancer or digestive issues down the line. So we do need to supplement in some. We have both soluble and insoluble fiber. Think of the soluble fiber like Metamucil. It's something that dissolves in water and turns into a gel. We can get it from things like oats, etc. This helps clear cholesterol, also helps with clearing the colon, keeps digestion working properly, and improves overall health. It's most often the one that's missing from diets. Helps you feel full, especially when you're on a dieting phase. So, like, you can shift from rice to oats and it fills you up more. Now, a lot of times guys, over the course of time from pounding food, they become intolerant to insoluble fiber. So a lot of times what I'll do is I keep my food sources pretty simple throughout the day with soluble fiber so I can digest things well. I'll stick to easy to digest carbohydrates in my off season during the day, mostly rice-based carbohydrates. And then I'll add in some soluble fiber at night through, say, Metamucil or whatever, psyllium husk, whatever your favorite source of that is. I'll get it then so it helps add bulk to my stool, helps with lowering cholesterol, and helps with digestion and clearing food out. Basically scrapes the colon out and cleans everything out. We're ready to go in the morning. You have a nice big dump in the morning. You're good to go. I learned that a long time ago from Dante Trudel. 25 years ago. No pun intended. We added Metamucil in with our program at the end of the day. That works really well. It's a simple and easy way to add it. Now, as far as insoluble fiber, easy sources, I find insoluble fiber to get a little easier to get in. I eat a lot of nuts in my diet, so you get insoluble fiber from nuts. Also get the EFAs from nuts that are also vital for health. I have another question coming up soon about EFAs. So I find that a little bit easier to get in. It doesn't fuck up digestion so bad like some of the soluble fiber does during the day when you're bulking. When you're on contest prep, it's a lot easier to get in. Most people end up pounding more fiber on contest prep. It's not a problem on contest prep because guys want to feel full. Now, during your off-season phase, that's where it can be difficult. Some other sources of insoluble fiber would be like brown rice, as I mentioned, nuts, potato skins. If you eat potatoes, you can eat the skin as well, although that can upset your stomach. Broccoli. Also, you have to be careful with, which can upset your stomach, green beans, things like that you can get when you're on your contest prep. And you can sprinkle a little bit of that in the off season as well. There are also fiber supplements out there that have both insoluble and soluble fiber in it if you want to just supplement it. But I think that's the easy way to do it. And guys, look, most guys just ignore it because of the stupid diets they do. It does concern me with guys that run keto and carnivore diets where they don't get enough fiber in. I know that those guys are going to say, look, you don't need it. Science says otherwise, but hey, you do you. It's also a concern when you're taking PEDs, when you're going to have further skewing in lipid metabolism and you're not using anything to help clear that cholesterol. So look, if you want to run a keto diet, if you want to run a carnivore diet, it might make sense just to put a fiber supplement in at the end of the day if you don't want to eat fruits and vegetables. I think it's productive and wise for your long-term health. Just think of it as buying insurance, putting on a helmet if you're riding a motorcycle. If you want to ride without a helmet, you do you, bro. I think it's probably the smart way to go if you're running PEDs to take a little bit of precaution and put some fiber in your diet. All right, next question here is from Eric Lubin. Eric asks, yo, Big Paul, I just added a second leg day into my program as per my coach, and it's a lot more volume and different exercises. Any advice on how to optimize training and recovery when making sizable additions to my program? Thank you again, Big Paul. I asked ChatGPT just because I was curious how many muscles are in the legs, excluding the feet, and there are 30 total muscles in each leg. And this has always kind of perplexed me, how dudes will split up their upper body workouts. You train your back, or like guys will do back width, back density. They'll do, shoulders one day, chest another day, triceps one day, biceps another day, but then they slam the entire leg workout into one day and then wonder why their legs don't grow. And usually it's just based around doing squats. And depending on your movement pattern and your physiology, squats may only work, depending on how you might be just working your glutes, you might just be working your adductors. Really, how you squat makes a big difference in what muscle is getting activation. I have noticed that dudes that only squat typically have poor leg developments, what I've seen. So to me, it makes sense if you're going to do 2 leg workouts a week. I treat them like completely different workouts like I would my upper body. I split my legs in half. I have a quad and calf focused day. Quads take a lot out of you, and you got to think the quadricep, 4 muscles, quadricep. There are different muscles within the quadricep, so you need to hit it from different angles. I usually have some sort of leg extension. I'll have some sort of squatting movement or leg pressing movement. I may do some sort of lunge or sissy squat type of movement. So I'm hitting all portions of the quadricep. Not that they don't all activate, but I notice a lot of guys don't have the vastus medialis development, the teardrop, so to speak. It's because they get so hyper-focused on the outer quad sweep. They get hyper-focused on that they completely neglect their adductors and their vastus medialis, and then they end up with these really weird-looking legs where they have the thigh gap. You'll see the guy on contest prep, at the end of contest prep at the local show, that's got the giant gap between his thighs because he's never worked adductors in his life, and completely ignored vastus medialis development, and also has no hamstrings. I've definitely have deficiencies in my hamstrings and my glutes. So I have my first workout, which is quadricep and calf focused. I think calves are largely genetic. You do have some control over calf development, but for the most part, you either have them or you don't. Work them or don't work them. I throw some calves in on my quadricep day. And then I have a second day that's more focused on posterior chain. Glutes and hamstrings, I focus on those. And I also add in some adductors. I think adductor training is something that is severely lacking. Like I said, you'll see dudes with thigh gap, and the adductor takes up something like 40% of your total leg mass. Everybody gets hyper-focused on quads, and they completely forget about adductors. And if you want that drumstick appearance to your quads where you have the thick, or your legs, we should say, everybody just calls them quads. If you want that thick appearance to your legs where it looks like a drumstick on a chicken, you need to work your adductors. Your adductors need to be considered. And most bros neglect glutes. I am guilty of it. I have the serious old white man ass. I have been really trying to work my glutes more. I notice that my glutes, probably because I'm tall, don't seem to fire on any other leg exercises. I have to go in with some intentionality to actually activate my glutes. Same thing with hamstrings. Hamstrings require both a hip hinge and some sort of curling movement. Adductors, you know, adduction, sumo squats, anything that's wide with your toes pointed out, high and wide on the leg press, whatever you want to do. I like goblet squats, or you can do the there's a million other things you can do. You can do belt squats, where you have a wide stance on belt squats with your toes pointed out. I would definitely work in some adductor development, put a lot of effort into adductors, but really think of it as two different workouts. It's not leg workouts. You're working different muscles, just like you would with your upper body when we're working chest one day and back the other day. It's not, we don't just say upper body. And it's weird to me that we delineate upper body muscles, but we don't delineate leg muscles in bodybuilding training. All right, next question here is from Dylan W. Do albumin and globulin have any relevance to steroid-using bodybuilders, our population, as far as blood panels go? Yes, they do have relevance. They are important indicators of your overall health. Albumin is a carrier protein for steroids. It's SHBG would be lumped in with globulin. SHBG is a more potent carrier for steroid hormones, but they're both critically important. Albumin does play a smaller role in the active portion of free hormones available in the bloodstream, steroidal hormones. Albumin is made in the liver, so low albumin can be an indicator of poor liver health. We'll often see it when using oral steroids. I've also noticed that albumin and globulin tend to get suppressed when using tren. Not really sure why. And maybe somebody smarter than me can give you an explanation on that. But I have noticed that in blood work when people are running high doses of tren. Globulin is also a group of carrier proteins, which includes SHBG. And, guys are very familiar with SHBG and its role. Recently, it's been something that's talked about a lot. Vigor Steve has some pretty robust information about SHBG and its importance in the human body. Globulins also include immunoglobulins, which is an indicator of immune function. This is another one I see that gets suppressed when running tren. And we do know that running high doses of steroids, specifically tren, I see it with tren, can suppress immune function. I see this quite a bit with guys coming out of contest prep, something to be aware of. Like albumin, changes in globulin can be an indicator of impaired liver function. Also, if there's, if kidney function is skewed, you'll see lower levels of it through excretion through the kidneys, of loss of it through urine excretion. So it's an overall indicator of liver and kidney function, something that we need to pay attention to. I do typically see these numbers go down when guys are in diet phases, running orals, running tren. In the off season, for the most part, I don't see them affected. In the off season, it seems like orals and tren are the most potent at affecting these. Running heavy doses of DHT derivatives we know for sure can suppress SHBG. We see that with high doses of oral steroids, specifically like Anavar, Winstrol, sometimes Primobolan, even Masteron doesn't seem to be as potent at lowering it as that Primobolan is, but it's just something to pay attention to. Really, contest prep is the time that I usually see it get skewed. Like I said, I don't see it being a problem in the off season, even when running high doses of testosterone and growth hormone, the bioidentical hormones. They don't seem to smash either of them. And occasionally I do see it on contest prep when guys are ragged out towards the end of contest prep. So it is an indicator, something you pay attention to. Usually once you remove those compounds, it bounces back pretty quick, but it is an indicator, something that we need to watch. It sort of is the canary in the coal mine for other bigger problems that we need to look out for. All right, next question here is from Jay Roberts from the School Anabolic Bodybuilding Members Community. You can join it for $30 a month if you want to ask questions for the Q&A. Jay asks, Paul, what are your thoughts on using retatrutide for a massing phase? My thoughts are that as long as you get foods to be in appropriate calorie surplus, it could help maintain insulin sensitivity and improve macronutrient partitioning. I think this will help minimize fat gain and allow me to run a caloric surplus for longer duration, adding more tissue. Yeah, in theory, that sounds correct. But long-term, we have no idea. There's no long-term use of retatrutide. At this point, it's still a relatively new drug. From what I understand, it's in phase 3 clinical trials right now. What we've seen so far seems to be encouraging, but I do have concerns and I do see promise. Some of the big things that I see with using retatrutide at a lower dose during the off season, I've experimented with it myself, and I've had several of my clients report back to me with their experiences with it. It's not an FDA-approved drug yet, so I'm not suggesting that you go take it. We're dummy bodybuilders, so don't do what we do. But what I have seen is massive improvements in lipids. It seems to improve HDL, LDL, primarily LDL and triglycerides. I see pretty massive improvement there. Improves insulin sensitivity. It seems to improve pancreatic function, which can be beneficial in the off season, especially when we talk about improved pancreatic function, insulin sensitivity, when we're pounding food in the off season, keeping lipids under control, because we know PEDs skew lipid function. I know guys always get emotional when I talk about high LDL causing problems. Look at it this way. And I'm not to get on my LDL high horse here, but having high cholesterol is correlative with cardiovascular risk. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a heart attack or cardiovascular disease, but there is a linear one-to-one correlation between increased lipids and cardiovascular risk. Think of it this way. It's like riding a motorcycle and not wearing a helmet. If you let your lipids run wild, just like not wearing a helmet, it's not a guarantee that you're going to die riding a motorcycle, but there is a direct link between riding motorcycles, wearing helmets, and outcomes of when you're in an accident. It's the same thing with LDLs and cholesterol and lipid management. If you manage your lipids appropriately, especially when using PEDs, when we're further skewing lipids, you're going to lower risk. You're improving your odds of not having a bad outcome. It's not a guarantee, but it lowers risk. We're playing the odds game here. And that's the way it was described to me from my lipidologist. So I think that's one of the big advantages of running retatrutide in the off season. Now, concerns I have is the slowed gastric emptying and the suppression of appetite in the off season. And I'm also not sure how it affects glycogen synthesis. I'm really not sure. Now, in theory, the glucagon agonist should only affect liver glycogen, but I have noticed that it seems like it's a little harder to get full when running retatrutide. This is just an anecdote. Could be completely incorrect about this, but that's just my anecdote. I do have some concern about the slowed gastric emptying in the off season. I have definitely noticed that my gastric emptying has slowed down. Not to overshare, but I used to poop as soon as I get up in the morning. And it would be meal 6 from the night before that I'd be pooping out. That doesn't happen anymore with running a GLP1. It's like noontime before that happens. And I noticed that I need more time between meals to get my meals to fully digest before I can eat again. And that might end up being a problem in the off season with bodybuilders. Now, we have to weigh that against the improved insulin sensitivity, the improved lipid metabolism, the improved pancreatic function, all of the health benefits that these drugs have. Now, here's what I'll say. Long term, we have no idea. But we're going to find out. But my suspicion is that these drugs long term are going to increase longevity, improve long-term health outcomes, keep guys leaner. Now, whether or not they're performance enhancing, I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But if you're concerned about your health, it does seem like a tool that you could be using to improve health. I mean, if I think about it, like it could potentially replace statins, ezetimibe, potentially keep your liver healthier, reduce visceral fat, lower the need for insulin use, lower the need for something like metformin. Really, it could potentially, 1 milligram a week could potentially replace all of those drugs to treat the underlying problems that we have during an off season of steroid use and eating a bunch of food. So these are all parts of the equation that we need to evaluate and weigh out. Right now, I'm using it. I'm going to continue to use it. It has lowered my A1C. And, I've seen mostly positive effects. I will say the gastric emptying is a negative effect. Increased pulse is a negative effect that I have noticed. But I'm taking the chance because I think the overall effects, positive effects outweigh any of the potential negatives that I have noticed. But that's an evaluation you're going to have to make for yourself. And like I said, long term, we have no idea. We'll find out. Josh McGee asks, in your opinion, what is the most difficult, challenging trait you find in clients? Example, training intensity, diet following, cardio, PED usage, etc. Most of the people that come to me are generally in love with the gym. That's not a problem. Getting motivated to lift is not an issue. Now, we could question intensity in the gym, whether, some people are training hard enough. But I would say most guys that come to me are fine there. And most guys that come to me are also using PEDs. If anything, I usually have to pull people back in those areas. But I'd say training, here with training, the common problems I see with training is the meathead, old school, low volume, let's do one set all out failure approach, train 3 days a week. Now, that's not to say that it can't work, but we're looking at the laws of averages with people when it comes to training. And if you look at most professional bodybuilders, most of them are doing some sort of moderate to high volume training. I know guys get upset when I talk about Mike Mentzer stuff. If you like it, if it's working for you, keep doing it. Great. I just don't see anybody on the pro stage doing Mike Mentzer style training. I just don't. They just don't exist. There's been a couple small examples, outliers that have existed, and most of those people aren't doing it exactly the way they do it. But I would say you need to train like a bodybuilder, not a power lifter. You need to train like a bodybuilder, not like a CrossFitter. If you get that stuff ironed out, but I find most people train adequately enough to make progress. That's usually not what's holding them back for most of the people that come to me. And to be honest with you, and this is a controversial take as well, if I were to evaluate PEDs, training, and nutrition, I would put training at the bottom of the totem pole as far as importance. Just train hard, train with some intent, train progressively, and you're going to make progress for the most part. Now, that's not to say you can't dial things in. You certainly can dial things in more. You can be very specific with your training. You can, be more efficient with your training. But I find nutrition is the area where most people are severely lacking. That's the area where most people are severely lacking. There's lack of discipline in training. There's lack of, nutrition. There's lack of understanding in how nutrition works. There's so many misconceptions, so much bad information about nutrition. There's this weird fear of carbs. There's, everybody doesn't seem to understand how fats work in a diet. There's zero concept of how fats work in a diet. A lot of guys are eating the wrong foods and impairing digestion. They're eating the wrong amounts of macronutrients. They're not doing their diet properly. And the one area I can fix with people and see the most rapid improvement, it's not PEDs, It's not training, it's the diet. I can transform somebody literally in 12 to 16 weeks by fixing their diet. You can't do that with training. You can't do that with a cycle. I just have not seen it. Now, in regards to cycle, I would say most people overthink cycles. The area they should be overthinking and getting into more nuance, into more detail, is the diet, and they never do. They oversimplify the diet. They overcomplicate the cycle. They oversimplify the training. It's so fucking weird to me. Like, everybody thinks they're a biochemist when it comes to PEDs, but then they're like, bro, just train hard and eat meat. when it comes to diet and training, which just blows my mind. You know, you're a goddamn PhD biochemist when it comes to the PED usage, and when really that's probably the simplest part of the equation. Just take tests, GH, whatever anabolic you like that works for you. I don't give a fuck if it's Masteron, Primobolan, Deca, EQ, whatever. Just pick one. Pick one that works for you. Doesn't give you a bunch of side effects. Just fucking take it. Take a bunch of it. If you got a big set of balls, run some insulin with it periodically. You're going to grow. It's the diet. I've seen a lot of guys on crappy cycles, heavy cycles, a lot of cycles, and they end up with shitty physiques. I've seen a lot of guys that train hard that have shitty physiques, but guys that get their diet buttoned up, they always make rapid improvements. So if I were to place an emphasis on one thing, and I would say with my coaching, this is the area that I dial in and I get focused on, is the nutrition. Really. That's the area where you can make the most difference and the most impact with people. I've just seen it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's the area where most people are deficient in and completely have it wrong. They don't do the right things. And as soon as I fix their diet, they start making rapid progress. Train with intensity, train with intention for promoting hypertrophy, train consistently, take simple, basic PEDs, be consistent with it. Don't make yourself sick. Don't take exotic compounds that are going to make yourself sick, because if you're sick, you're not going to make any progress. Keep your health maintained, and then just follow a strict, structured, well thought out diet, and you will make progress. All right, next question here is from Aaron G. My appetite has been vicious my entire life. I don't want to be on GLP1s indefinitely. My natural IGF-1 on keto was 226 and 312 with carbs consistently. Can high IGF-1 cause an appetite increase, or should I see a doctor about a hormone panel? What long-term safe supplements or medicines are available for appetite suppression? And how does IGF-1 output affect GH dosing? So yes, IGF-1 and insulin can affect appetite both negatively and positively. What I see most often is the problem is there's some sort of hunger hormone signaling issue. A lot of times people have leptin resistance, and I know like metformin can address leptin resistance. Sometimes it can be a dopaminergic response to eating the food, like how these hormones affect the hypothalamus. If you're eating very sugary carb sources and you have a spike in insulin and reactive hypoglycemia, then that can cause an increase in hunger. It's very complex, but I think a lot of it is that just people are just metabolically disordered. If you were a former fat guy, I find that former fat guys struggle with hunger hormone signaling issues where ghrelin is rampant and there's leptin resistance. Leptin just doesn't work anymore. These GLP-1 drugs seem to be very effective at fixing hunger hormone signaling and lowering the dopamine response to food. Now, I know the old school bros will say, just have some fucking willpower, man. Just be strong, bro. Ghrelin always wins, man. If leptin's fucked up, ghrelin's high, then you're going to have issues. That's just how it goes. Now, what I would say is get yourself, yo-yo dieting can definitely make it worse. That's what I've seen when guys crash dieting, and crash diet, they'll run zero carbs for long periods of time, then they binge eat, and then they have this huge rebound in weight gain, and they blow their insulin sensitivity out. it really, yo-yo dieting is what I see really fucks people up. I've been able to fix a lot of people with their hunger hormone signaling through carb cycling, just being smart, not making drastic changes in their diet, introducing some carbs to their diet, managing how their metabolism is, increasing muscle mass, getting them lean, keeping their body composition in a good spot. And I would say that, I know your hesitancy to use the GLP-1 drugs, but if it's something that keeps you in better shape, keeps you, maintains your ability to manage your hunger and not binge eat. Binge eating is going to make it worse because you're going to have a spike in insulin. You're going to have some sort of reactive hypoglycemia. A lot of times afterwards, hunger is going to go through the roof. I've been in that cycle before where you pound a bunch of trash food, high fat, high sugar food, high saturated fat, high sugar food, and then you just have this crash afterwards, and then you get hungry again and you eat more shit. And it's just like this repetitive cycle where you get into, and then you end up metabolically disordered. You have leptin resistance, you have disordered, hunger hormone signaling, just a whole cascade of problems. I would say being more consistent with your diet, making small changes to your diet, not staying away from carbs completely. I know you mentioned IGF-1 levels. It's another thing. Like you'll see guys, they're running growth hormone and they're like, why is my IGF-1 low? Well, when you're not eating carbohydrates, IGF-1, or why is my IGF-1 low? When you're not eating carbohydrates, that whole pathway, there's no insulin present or very minimal insulin present. You're going to have lowered mTOR, lowered IGF-1 as a result. It doesn't matter what growth hormone you take, your IGF-1 is going to be suppressed. And now, if you're a person that runs high IGF-1, I'm diabetic, and I've noticed that most diabetics or people who have high insulin at times tend to have higher IGF-1. There is a correlation between higher insulin production and higher IGF-1. So that is something to be aware of. But what I would say is get yourself on a stable diet. I wouldn't go too high on the carbs. I wouldn't go too low on the carbs. I would try to eat a balanced diet. I would try to get yourself lean. I would prevent binge eating. If you need a GLP-1 to help with that, run a GLP-1 in the meantime. Metformin also works as well, not as well as the GLP-1s, but they do affect ghrelin and leptin and hunger hormone signaling. Metformin does seem to somewhat repair leptin resistance if that's an issue. So if you don't want to run the GLP-1s, that is an option. But the main thing is just to get yourself in a healthy cycle that you can maintain. All right, next question here is from Jason Bateman. Jason said, I was up to 500 milligrams of testosterone enanthate for 6 weeks. Then I weaned myself down to 250 milligrams per week, now down to 200 every 2 weeks to finish the cycle. Should I take Clomid while on low dosage of TRT? The reason I ask is because it could be a coincidence, but I started taking Clomid 3 days after, and I had major acne blow-up. I was just wondering if there is a reason to be concerned. A few thoughts here. One, why are you taking the testosterone every 2 weeks? You should be taking it more frequently, like that. You're going to have a hormonal yo-yo. I don't know if you meant 2 weeks on the 200 or if you're taking it every if you're taking it every 2 weeks. So if you're taking it every 2 weeks, you need to be injecting it more frequently. Also, I don't know why you would be on 500 for 6 weeks and then taper down. I would probably run my off-season cycle longer than that. You're not going to get a whole lot out of it from being on it for six weeks. You're just creating this big hormonal yo-yo. Your body strives for homeostasis, and when you're constantly moving your hormones around, your body just gets completely out of flux. The reason why you're having an acne flare-up most likely is because Clomid is going to increase estrogen, and estrogen increases sebum production, and you're going to have oily skin. And if you're prone to acne, that's going to cause an acne flare-up. I am not a fan of Clomid. I think there are way better choices if you're concerned about fertility. If you're coming completely off, then you can run a full PCT protocol. If you're going to stay off for probably 6 months or more, that is an option. But I would say if you're not trying to knock your lady up, you're not concerned about fertility at the current time, I very rarely do I see guys that can't recover fertility when it's necessary. I would just cruise on your TRT dose and not use Clomid. Clomid is fucking nasty, man. I do not like it. It makes you feel like shit. Like you said, you all you're doing with like this up and down that you're doing is creating a big hormonal yo-yo. You just set your body up for, your body doesn't know what the fuck's going on. You're all over the place. You probably didn't make any progress in the gym because you weren't on long enough for it to really do anything. And now you're come crashing down. You're not taking your injections frequently enough to keep estradiol conversion in check. And then you have this up and down with your hormones. And then you throw Clomid in the mix where you're going to get a huge spike in estrogen. I bet your estrogen's probably through the roof right now. And you're just your body just doesn't know what the hell's going on. You've created, all you've done is just created this big hormonal yo-yo. It's just going to make you feel like shit and probably make things worse. Now, if you're concerned about fertility, you can keep a low dose HCG in throughout your cycle. I would probably keep things more level. Get up to your taper up to your 500 milligram dose if that's what you want to do. Keep it there for probably 12 to 16 weeks, and then come down to your TRT dose. If you want to run HCG because you're concerned about the size of your balls and fertility, you can run a little bit of HCG with your cycle. Otherwise, throw that Clomid in the trash. Keep things more stable and let your body achieve some homeostasis. Otherwise, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to put your body through the yo-yo. You're going to have acne. You're going to have all sorts of problems. You're going to be emotionally up and down. You're probably not going to make any progress in the gym. You're going to have a bunch of water retention that comes and goes. You're just making a mess of things by doing it that way. So I would keep things a little more stable, be a little more considerate with your cycle. Not to smash your balls here, man, but you're making things worse with the way you have things structured. All right, next question here is from Joe DeMeo. Joe DeMeo is one of my coaching clients that I coach for Bodybuilding. Joe's makes some great progress. If you want to see Joe's progress on Instagram, I posted up recently. Joe has gotten himself ripped, and he looks fantastic. Really proud of this guy. He's worked his butt off. Joe has a question about fats. What issues arise if you cut out all fats completely? Extremes with diets, I see guys go extremes both ways. There's the no fat people. There's the no carbohydrate people. What I found works the best is some sort of balance. Now, with fats, there are essential fatty acids that our body cannot make on their own. They're called essential because we can't make them. Omega-3, omega-6. I see a lot of people that are deficient in omega-3 and omega-6. Even dudes that are eating high-fat diets are usually deficient in omega-3 and omega-6. They eat way too much saturated fat, not enough omega-3 and omega-6s. You can, sometimes when I'm doing guys on contest prep, I'll crank the fats down close to zero for very, very short periods of time if we have some really stubborn fat we need to get off. I will supplement in some omega-3, DHA, and EPA, specifically probably through some fish oil if we go down very low fat, but I don't take all the fats out completely, ever, except with the exception of maybe one high day a week where we keep the fats pretty low. Even then, there's probably still 20 to 30 grams of fats in the diet on that day. EFAs are very important for cell membrane health. They keep cells functioning. They are very important for immune health and blood clotting, etc. They are necessary for central nervous system health, endothelial health. Like I said, most guys are deficient in EFAs, specifically DHA and EPA. I supplement in both of those through both foods and through supplement sources. A good high quality fish oil pill. You don't want to go without EFAs. You're going to end up having a bunch of problems if you do. So you definitely need to keep some EFAs in your diet, a minimal amount of EFAs. I even keep them in on contest prep. Even like I said, even when I pull the fats down low, I try to eliminate as much saturated fat as I possibly can. If we really need to yank calories down, we really need to create a strong deficit, but I will supplement EFAs. When I see guys pull out EFAs as well, the old school cod and asparagus diet where you don't have any, man, people just end up making themselves sick. You'll see it in their blood work. A lot of times you'll see it in how they look. You can get away with it for a short period of time, but man, it fucks you up. And especially like when we have we're running high doses of oral steroids and other harsh stuff towards the end of contest prep. We already talked about how you see immune function get smashed towards the end of contest prep. That'll just further exacerbate it and make it worse, and lipids will get worse. HDL gets super suppressed. You'll see all sorts of problems happen if you yank them out completely. In the long term, you can even die. I mean, you'll see people, die of malnutrition from not having. You can have enough calories, but if you're not getting EFAs, and eventually you will fucking die. Your immune system will come crashing down. Your cellular health will come crashing down. Neurological health will be an issue, and eventually you'll die of malnutrition. So you do need to keep some EFAs in your diet. In fact, I think most people are deficient in EFAs. They probably need to supplement in some EFAs. If you're going to cut it from anywhere, it's going to be saturated fats for the most part. Those are mostly just an energy source that you need a little bit for bile production. But for the most part, I would keep saturated fats low, keep some EFAs in, even in a severely calorically restricted period where you're trying to lower body fat. I will yank carbs all the way out before I pull the EFAs out. I don't ever yank EFAs out. I leave some baseline of EFAs in the diet for the most part. Like I would never yank the EFAs out. We need some in the diet for overall health. All right, next question is from George Peterson. I apologize, George. I missed your question last week. I wrote it down. So George gets the double one. He asked me why I find Sylvester Stallone, he mentioned that he was my idol. He's somebody that I admired growing up. I wouldn't say that he's my single idol. I don't know that I have one person I idolize more than any other, but Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael Jordan, those were kind of my heroes growing up, and they all have a commonality, all three of them, and it's just work ethic. I admire guys with strong work ethic. They don't make any excuses for themselves. They seem to overcome adversity. They seem to push through things. They conquer everything in front of them. They have this mindset of never surrender. I'm going to get it done no matter what. I'm going to accomplish what I want to accomplish, whatever the obstacles are. And I think that's what I admire about them. And they were like sort of real life superheroes to me, both in the movies and on the basketball court and in real life too. These guys did some pretty amazing things. And I just admire people that do amazing things, that work hard, that don't make excuses for themselves. Those are the people I have tended to gravitate toward and admire over the years. And that was why I love Sylvester Stallone. Now, on to George's question this week. George asked, for someone who has been on TRT for a year and is titrating up HGH, who's just starting off with adding a secondary PED, and I want to have a slow and methodical approach about it, presuming they had the following on hand, what order would you recommend they go? First, second, third, etc. He said, I have Anavar, Masteron, MPP, Primo, or is there anything else that you would suggest? It really depends on your body, your physiology. I generally start off with the DHT derivative as my first, outside of growth hormone. I would say the bioidentical hormones are where you want to start first, which are testosterone and growth hormone. We know what the downstream pathways are of those, how they're going to metabolize in the human body. It's very predictable for the most part. There are some variables like with estrogen conversion with testosterone that varies from person to person, but we for the most part know what's going to happen. Now, when it comes to the other secondary compounds, sometimes we don't. What I've seen is the most well tolerated are going to be either Primobolan or Masteron for a secondary compound. Those seem to be the two most well tolerated when I look at blood panels, and as far as overall response to PEDs, I would say if you're a high estrogen converter, I would lean towards Primobolan. Primobolan is really good at modulating estrogen, and in some people it's too effective at modulating estrogen, and they can crash their estrogen. I am, of course, a Primo fan, Primo Princess. I love Primobolan. It works well for me, but it doesn't for other people. I'm not by any means married to Primobolan. I don't follow a blind ideology when it comes to PED choice. I look at PEDs as a tool in the toolbox, and sometimes you need the screwdriver, sometimes you need the pliers. They do different things. And that's the way I look at Primobolan and Masteron. Masteron seems to work well with guys that don't convert estrogen at a high level, that guys that seem to feel better with their estrogen a little bit higher. Masteron doesn't smash your estrogen like Primobolan does. Masteron seems to act like a serum. For me, I find that Masteron dries me out too much. I tend to get very dry on Masteron. It seems to have a strong effect on mineral retention. I don't get that big full look on Masteron. Primobolan helps me maintain a little bit more fullness. Once again, this is just an anecdote. I don't have any science to back this up. Just my general observation. I think I'd look better on Primobolan. For the off season, I tend to like Primobolan better, and on contest prep, I tend to lean more towards Masteron because I want to be a bit drier. I work them both in, and I adjust the ratios based on how I respond. So I would probably start off with those two. I know a lot of guys go straight from the Anavar because they don't want to inject anything else. And a lot of hormone clinics will prescribe Anavar. Anavar, as far as orals go, would be my first choice of orals. But here's the trade-off with orals. Everybody gets hyper-focused on the effect on liver with orals. I find for the most part, when you run Anavar at a lower dose, it doesn't dramatically impact liver function that much. But what it does is it smashes HDL. And skewed lipids concerns me when running PEDs. As I gave you the lipid lecture earlier on in this podcast, I get concerned about it when using PEDs when you have severely skewed lipids. It's once again, it's not a guarantee that you're going to have a problem, but it certainly increases the risk. So something to be aware of. I do like using Anavar in spot duty here and there. Nandrolone, you mentioned NPP. You have choices of DECA or NPP, different esters, different pharmacokinetics of Nandrolone. Nandrolone I find to be a bit more of the spin the wheel with the side effects. For some people, it works really well. For other people, it causes a huge amount of problems. And sometimes it works well for a period of time, then it doesn't anymore. I used to love Nandrolone. It was my favorite choice for adding on size, but now that I've gotten older, I get too many side effects from it. It's just not worth it anymore. The juice is not worth the squeeze at this point in my life. And what I have found with Nandrolone, it is a synthetic progestin, and synthetic progestins do weird things in a man's body. A lot of guys end up with anxiety and depression, erectile dysfunction. It can affect dopamine. It can affect, some people end up with prolactin issues, although I find that to be pretty uncommon. It's usually more related to estrogen control than actual prolactin. It's an indirect result of estrogen being high and the affinity for Nandrolone for the progesterone receptor. From what I understand, once again, I'm not a biochemist. That's not my, I'm not by no means. There are people that know more than me. I'm not the world's foremost expert on this stuff, but this is what I've seen. I've seen a lot of guys have problems with Nandrolone. Some guys don't. You're going to have increased estradiol conversion with Nandrolone. It seems to have an effect on aromatase expression or the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. I think that's why a lot of guys say they feel great on Nandrolone-only cycles, but they don't when they add in testosterone until Nandrolone affects estrogen conversion, and then increased estrogen conversion along with the progestinic nature of Nandrolone seems to affect prolactin and dopamine. And then you start going down the slippery slope of problems. Most recently when I have run Nandrolone, I end up with erectile dysfunction and a bunch of anxiety, and I get bloated. I just don't like it anymore. My gyno flares up, so if you're prone to gyno, I probably would stay away from Nandrolone. So first choice would be Primobolan or Masteron. I'd just say 1A, 1B. I have a preference for Primobolan, but whatever floats your boat. If you like Masteron better, if you're on team Masteron, go for Masteron. If you're on team Primobolan, go for Primobolan. I don't get emotional about my steroids like some people do. They're a tool in the toolbox. I don't love the pliers more than I love the screwdriver. They do different jobs. Use the appropriate tool for the appropriate job. Listen to your body, how your body responds to the PED, and choose the one that is most appropriate for your situation. I would probably move. I probably would put probably if you had to press me, I'd put Anavar in there in spot duty. I wouldn't run Anavar continuously. I like occasionally using it as a pre-workout towards the end of a cycle when I need a little extra kick. You know, I've kind of gotten stuck. I like Anavar here and there. It also seems to mess my stomach up. Sometimes all orals do anymore. That's another problem you run into when you get older. And I would probably put Nandrolone at the bottom of that totem pole. If you were going to run Nandrolone, I'd pay very close attention to your estrogen conversion, how it affects that, any of the other side effects. And I probably would only run Nandrolone as a third compound, and I would address estrogen conversion. Probably, like, generally what I've seen work well is testosterone as a base, then something that's going to address estrogen conversion, either EQ or Primobolan. And then if you want to add Nandrolone in with that mix, it seems to work better at lower doses. Run lower doses of Nandrolone. I usually run like my Primobolan at something like 60% of my testosterone dose in the off season. Then if I were going to run Nandrolone, I'd run it at half or a third of whatever the Primobolan dose is. But honestly, anymore, I just mostly run test Primobolan GH if I were going to run a cycle, and I find that those are the most well tolerated. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you on this one. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I love each and every one of you. You're all awesome. I really thank you all for your support. It means a lot to me. I love doing this stuff. I love helping people. Hopefully, I'm preventing some harm along the way by being transparent and talking about how this stuff works and raising awareness about health and responsible PED use. I genuinely want to help people. So those of you that have been offended by some of my stuff lately, I apologize. I'm trying to be a little humorous, poke a little fun at things, silliness that I see when it comes to this stuff, and help people along the way. I love all of you. We'll see you on the next episode. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.